Hi, it's Krista at The Secret Yarnery. Welcome to my C2C Masterclass. If English isn't your first language, you can click on this gear on the video and scroll through to find your preferred dialect. And this easy-to-follow step-by-step crochet tutorial is available in both left and right-handed, so please check the description box below to find the version that suits you best. C2C can be very intimidating for a lot of people, but this tutorial, I'm going to break it down step by step, color-coded, so you're going to know what to do to make any shape you like. You can make a triangle. I'll show you how to make a square. I'm also going to show you how to do a rectangle, including how to change colors on an increase, on a decrease. You will have all the skills you need to make any sort of C2C you like. I'll also be showing you how to do stripes, how to make your squares equal colors on each side, and also how to finish off with a really cute edging. If you'd like to follow along with a written pattern, all of my patterns are available on my website, secretyarnery.com. And you don't have to worry about being able to read a pattern. All of my patterns are written in plain English, just like I was sitting there right beside you. It's all step-by-step with timestamps and all of the things you need to be able to grasp that tricky little bit of turning, joining, where to join to, what to do when you reach the end of your row, all those tricky little bits that can be confusing, and it will unlock all the possibilities of C2C. You can use any yarn you have. I just used scraps of nice colors that I liked. It's a just regular size 4 worsted weight acrylic, and I used a 6mm crochet hook with that. You will also need 2 stitch markers, one that means stop. I just don't have red, but red would be great, and one that means go or grow. So a green one for grow, a red one for stop. If you don't have stitch markers, you could use a piece of yarn and just slip stitch it to the edge of your work. You will also need a needle for sewing in your ends. If you find this tutorial helpful, please subscribe to my channel for more. And here are the timestamps. You can jump right back into where you left off. Let's get started. To start your C2C, we're going to be doing a triangle. So just grab your yarn and whatever hook goes along with that yarn. And we're going to be making a triangle just like this, but we're going to be working on it, starting with this one little square at the bottom. So to start, we are going to just make a regular slip knot any which way you normally do, leaving a long enough tail to sew in with a needle later. And just pop that onto your crochet hook. So we're going to start with a chain 6. So chain 1, 2, and 3, pinch, 4, 5, and 6. So we have our chain 6. Wrap your yarn, go into where you're pinching, the 4th chain from your hook. Just go underneath, so you have 2 strands on the top of your hook. And make 1 double crochet. Now into each of the next 2 chains, right here and right there, we're going to make 1 double crochet into each. So wrap your yarn and into the next chain, 1 double crochet. And we're going to go into the next chain. So I just look for these bottom loops. It's this little bottom loop right there, and then just go in so you have 2 strands of that chain on the top of your hook. So wrap your yarn and into that last chain, 1 double crochet. And that finishes row 1. So at the end of our row, we're just going to pop in a stitch marker just into that chain 3 space of our last block. So it's our only block, but we're just going to pop a stitch marker into it. And that finishes row 1, which is this one block right here. Now to start row 2, we're going to do the exact same thing. So we're building one of these blocks. That's how we're going to start every row of our increase, or while we are increasing, we are always going to start with this cute little block right here. So we're going to chain 6 again. So 1, 2, 3, pinch that 3rd chain, 4, 5, and 6. Wrap your yarn, and into the chain you're pinching, the 4th chain from your hook, just go in 2 strands on the top of your hook and make 1 double crochet. Wrap your yarn and into the next chain. So to look at my chains, I've worked into this chain here. There's my double crochet working into that first chain. Now here is my second chain, and here is my third. I just look at these bottom loops because that's where I'm going to be putting my hook. So the next stitch is going to be right here, and then the last one is right there. So wrap your yarn and into the next chain, 1 double crochet. Wrap your yarn and into the last chain. It is right here, right on top of that stitch, just right here. So wrap your yarn, 1 double crochet. So each of our blocks is a chain 3 and 3 double crochets. That is our block. So now we have to connect it, and we have to do this after we make the first block every single row. And don't worry if it doesn't make sense right now. It will make sense about row 6. So give yourself time. I'm not leaving you. Just follow what I'm doing. By row 6, you'll get it. So the first block of every row, you're going to flip up our work. So if you're just holding your work, the block you just did, you will have this first block right there, the one with the stitch marker. We're just going to flip it up. So we flip up our work, and we are going to slip stitch into that space with the stitch marker. That's how we're going to connect it. So into the space with the stitch marker, slip stitch to join your block, and chain 3 to start your block. 1, 2, and 3. You can pop that stitch marker out, and into the space, 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. So that's our last block of row 2. 2 blocks for row 2. So pop in a stitch marker, and we're just putting that stitch marker into that chain space right before our double crochets. Next is row 3, these blocks right here. So to start your row, we're going to do the same thing. We have to build one of those blocks. So we're going to chain 6. 1, 2, 3, pinch, 4, 5, and 6. So into that chain where we're pinching, or the 4th chain from your hook, we're going to make our first double crochet. So wrap your yarn and go into that chain, 2 strands on the top of your hook, and make 1 double crochet. And into each of the next 2 chains, we need to make a double crochet into each. So a double crochet right there, and a double crochet into this last chain right down there. So wrap your yarn and 1 double crochet into the next chain. And 1 double crochet into the last chain right on top of that block. So that's what it looks like. Now we're going to do the same thing. We're just going to flip up our work. If you just let it hang underneath your hook and just lay it down, it'll stay the right way around. So we have what's on our hook, our loose block, and we have our little staircase that started. We want to take our staircase and flip it up. And then we want to rotate our loose block over, and we're going to slip stitch where that stitch marker is. Okay? So into where the stitch marker is, slip stitch to join your block. You can pop that stitch marker out. And chain 3 to start your block. 1, 2, and 3. And into the space, 3 double crochets right into that chain space. 1, 2, and 3. Into this next chain space, just pop your hook in, slip stitch to join your blocks, and chain 3 to get your height. 1, 2, 3. Into that chain space, 3 double crochets. just into the space. And there are our 3 blocks for row 3. So let's pop a stitch marker into that last chain space on our last block, right there. And now we have finished row 3, these blocks right there. For row 4, we're going to work across and make 4 blocks. So we're always starting the same way with our chain 6. We have to build a new block. So chain 6. 1, 2, 3, pinch. 1, 2, 3. Wrap your yarn and go into that chain where we're pinching. 2 strands on the top of your hook and make 1 double crochet. And then 1 double crochet into each of these 2 chains. So wrap your yarn and 1 double crochet into the next. Wrap your yarn and 1 double crochet into the last one, right down there. So if you just lay down your work, that is what it looks like. We're going to take our finished work, or the blocks we've already connected, our little staircase, and flip it up. Then we're going to slip stitch into that space where our stitch marker is. Just pop your hook in and slip stitch to join that new block. Take your stitch marker out. Chain 3. 1, 2, 3. That gives us our height. And now 3 double crochets into the space to build our block. 1, 2, and 3. We're going to slip stitch into that space on the top of our block. So we have like our little staircase going on, and we're building our blocks and connecting them into these chain spaces at the top of our blocks. So each block, we have to connect it to our staircase. So just slip stitch into that next space and chain 3 to get your height. 1, 2, and 3. And into that same chain space, we're going to build our block. So 3 double crochets to build our block. 1, 2, and 3. Now we're going to slip stitch into that space to join, just to connect that block to our staircase. So pop your hook in and slip stitch to join. Chain 3 to get your height. 1, 2, and 3. And into that space, 3 double crochets. Just to finish off our row. 2, and there is 3. So that is the last block of row 4. So grab your stitch marker and pop it into that chain space, just like that. And that finishes row 4. For row 5, we're going to do 5 blocks along our staircase. And this is when it's going to start making a little bit of sense to you. So to start our block, chain 6. 1, 2, 3, pinch. 4, 5, and 6. Wrap your yarn and into that 4th chain from your hook, right where we're pinching. 2 strands of that chain on the top of your hook. 1 double crochet. And 1 double crochet into each of those chains going down. So a total of 3 double crochets. There's number 2. And our last one goes right there, right on top of that last block with 1 double crochet. It looks like this. When you lay your work down, you have your block right by your hook. So you can just hold that block and flip up your work. And now we're going to join, slip stitch right into that chain space where our stitch marker is. So you can pop the stitch marker out and just slip stitch to join that block to your staircase. And now we are ready to do our stairs going all the way up. So chain 3 to get your height. 1, 2, 3, into the space, 3 double crochets. So blocks are always chain 3 and 3 double crochets. If I'm going too fast, just slow me down or speed me up. Just use that gear right there and adjust me. So now we're going to connect that block to the next step or the next stair right here, like a little staircase. So slip stitch to join and chain 3 to get your height for your new block. 2 and 3. Into the space, 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. And now we have to connect that block. So find the top of that next staircase, that next step. Pop your hook in and make a slip stitch into that space. Chain 3 to get your height. And 3 double crochets into that same space. 1, 2, and 3. Now we have to connect that block, so find the space on the top of that last block. Pop your hook in and slip stitch. That joins up our block, and now we need to get our height. So chain 3. At the end of your row, just remember you do have to build a block into this last space right here. We can't just join and turn or we'll have just a weird edge. So keep track to make sure that your edge is staying straight and that you have the same number of blocks as how many rows you're on. So we're on row 5. We need 5 blocks. We have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have to put in that last block for our 5. So that finishes row 5 with 5 blocks. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So pop that stitch marker into that last chain space we made. For row 6, we're doing 6 stairs. So our staircase is just growing, growing, growing. To start row 6, chain 6. 1, 2, 3. Pinch it. 4, 5, and 6. Wrap your yarn and into the 4th chain from your hook, right where we're pinching. 1 double crochet. And 1 double crochet into each of those 2 chains, or each of the next 2 chains. So into the next chain, 1 double crochet, and into the last chain, 1 double crochet. Now you can just lay your work down, hold down that block that you just made, flip up your staircase. So now we're just going to rotate that block and slip stitch right into where that stitch marker is. So slip stitch to join and chain 3 to get your height. 1, 2, and 3. You can pop that stitch marker out. And now we're going to build our blocks all the way up our staircase. So each of these spaces is going to get a new step, a new block, all the way along, and we're going to have a total of 6 blocks. So into this very first space, right where we joined, 3 double crochets. And then we have to connect it to our staircase. So slip stitch into the space of that next block. Chain 3 to get your height. And then 3 double crochets into that space to build your block. Slip stitch into the top of the next stair to join your block. Chain 3 to get your height. 1, 2, and 3. And into that space, 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and 3. We're going to slip stitch to connect that block, just into the space of that next stair. Chain 3 to get your height. 1, 2, and 3. And into that space, 3 double crochets. At the end, you can just flip that last stair down and just pinch it so it doesn't get in your way. You don't snag it with your hook. Now you can flip that last one back up, and we're going to build our last block into our last stair, or last bit of the staircase. So connect it with a slip stitch. Get your height with a chain 3. And remember, we always have to build a block into this last space right here. We always have to finish with our yarn right on the edge. 3 double crochets into that last space. And there is our 6th row completed. So just pop a stitch marker into that space of the last block we made right there at the top. So at the end of your row, also just make sure that that edge is straight, that you have worked into that last block. Growing your C2C, just keep working up this staircase until your side is the measurement that you want your blanket to be, the skinniest side. So if you're doing a rectangle, one side will be the skinny side of your rectangle. If you're doing a square, one side will be the width of your square. And if you're doing a triangle, it will be the size you like. So pause the video, keep working until one side is the skinniest side or the smallest side of whatever you're making. Now that we have finished our triangle, or finished our increase, we are ready to start decreasing into a square. We are going to work our way back along just like usual, except we are not building any more blocks. So go ahead and turn your work. And we're going to work into the very first stitch. We're just going to slip stitch back along our work. So slip stitch, slip stitch, slip stitch, and a slip stitch. So into the first stitch, slip stitch, into the second stitch, slip stitch, and into the third stitch, slip stitch, and into the space, slip stitch. So that is our new edge. I'm going to change colors. So I'm just going to finish off that last slip stitch into the space with a new yarn color. So I'm going to go into that space with my hook, just holding that yarn on the back of my work, put a new loop of yarn on my hook, and just finish that slip stitch with my new yarn. Hold both of those tails at the back, and do my chain 3. 1, 2, and 3. So that's how to change yarn when you are doing a decrease. And now just work along your staircase, same as usual, 3 double crochets into the space. Slip stitch to the staircase to join, and chain 3 to get your height for your next block. So you can pause the video and keep working along, doing your slip stitch, chain 3, 3 double crochets, and then a slip stitch and start into the next block all the way along your staircase. And I'll meet you when we get up to the last block right up here. We're doing the same thing all the way until we get to the last block right up here. When you are ready to join your last block, we're going to slip stitch like normal. But now we're not building a block, we're not chaining, we're just going to turn our work. And we're going to slip stitch into these 3 stitches that we made. So 1, 2, and 3. And then also slip stitch into the space. So into that first stitch, slip stitch, the second, slip stitch, the third, slip stitch, and into the space, slip stitch. So that gets us working right back along the top of those stitches. Now we just kind of rotate our work, and we're ready to start building our block. So chain 3 to get your height, and 3 double crochets into the space. So the only difference for decreasing is we're not building blocks, we're just slip stitching back along our stitches. So we're just making these edges nice and flat now. So you can pause the video, keep working up your staircase, doing your regular blocks and connecting them to your staircase all the way up. And I'll meet you again when we get to the top of our staircase. When you get back to the top, we're going to connect that last block to our staircase with our little slip stitch into the space. No chaining. We're just going to turn our work. Make sure that loop is on the fat part of your hook. That helps. And now we're going to slip stitch. We're going to do 4 slip stitches. So into the first stitch right here, that's 1, 2, 3, and then into the space like usual. So 4 slip stitches. There's 1, 2, 3, and into the space. So there's our nice flat edge, our decrease of our C2C. Chain 3, 1, 2, 3. Rotate your work. And now we're ready to do this row right there. And you'll notice our rows are getting faster and faster because we're doing less blocks. Every row is 1 less block we have to do. So it really starts speeding along, very motivational. See how it's getting nice and square on these sides? So now pause the video, keep working along, doing a block and connecting it to the staircase all the way up, and I'll meet you at the top, right up there. When you reach back to the top edge of your staircase, and we're going to do this every row all the way along until we finish our block or finish our square. We're going to slip stitch into that space. Push that loop onto the fat part of your hook. Turn your work and make 4 slip stitches to get to that edge where we can start building our next block. So slip stitching into the first stitch, slip stitching into the second, into the third, and also into that chain space. So that's how we're going to end every row of our decrease. 4 slip stitches. And you can pull your hook up a little bit. You can have a bit of a bigger loop if you have tight slip stitches, just so it matches the tension of your stitches. So there we are. There's the last one into that space. You can chain 3, rotate your work, and then start building your block into that same space right there, all the way along. And we're going to do the same thing every time we reach the end of the row. So slip stitch into the space to join it, 4 slip stitches to get to this spot right here, and then chain 3 and keep going. So you can pause the video and I'll meet you when you get closer to the end of your block. Getting close to the end, I'm just going to attach that block, so slip stitch to the staircase. Put the loop on the fat part of my hook and turn my work. slip stitch into each of these stitches. And last slip stitch into the space. Chain 3 and rotate your work. So same as before, except it looks tiny. There's only one little spot left. So into that last space, 3 double crochets to build our last block. Slip stitch to join. Chain 1 to secure your yarn. Cut your yarn, leaving a long enough tail to sew in with a needle later. Pull your hook up and your yarn through and snug that down to secure. Now we're ready to make a C2C rectangle. Because you have all the skills you need, you know how to increase, you know how to decrease, and a rectangle is just a combination of both of those skill sets. So one side we are going to do an increase, and one side we are going to do a decrease. So one side we're doing what we did for the purple, and the other side we're doing what we did for the green. So let's get started. To make a rectangle, we start with the very same triangle, or whatever size triangle you want your rectangle to be. So this will be the narrowest or the smallest side of your rectangle. And you'll need a couple stitch markers. One represents go or grow, and one represents stop. So you could use red and green. I don't have red, so I'm using orange. And just think green means go or grow. And of course, if you don't have these, you can just use a contrasting piece of yarn, something that tells you to grow and something that tells you to stop. So put your grow one or your green stitch marker or green piece of yarn or paper clip into that top area, anywhere along this edge here, and put your stop stitch marker or your stop yarn, you just tie it or clip it onto that bottom edge of your work. So one side is grow and one side is stop. If you're going to continue with the same yarn, do your chain 6 and build your block. If you're going to change color, then we're going to change color before we do that chain 6. So we're going to finish that last double crochet with our new color yarn. So those last 2 loops of the stitch on your hook, grab a new color of yarn, bring it through, drop your tails, and now do your chain 6. 1, 2, 3, pinch, 4, 5, and 6. So into that 4th chain from your hook, or that chain that you are pinching, just slide your hook in and make 1 double crochet. And 1 double crochet into each of the next 2 stitches. So just our normal block for growing or increasing. So there is our block. And here is our work. Now your stitches could look a little bit loose, but remember you have those tails. You can shrink that up and get it looking just perfect. So laying everything down, holding your new block, just so it doesn't flip with your work, and turn the rest of your work up. And then we're going to rotate that block to join. So same as usual, same as increasing into a triangle. So just pop your hook into that space and slip stitch to join. Chain 3 to start your new block. 1, 2, 3. 3 double crochets into the space. 1, 2, and 3. Slip stitch to join. And do your chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And now you can pause the video and keep working back up along your staircase, doing a block and joining all the way up. And I will meet you when you get to this very last block, this last step or last stair right up here. When you have reached the top of your staircase, we're at our stop stitch marker. So we're not growing on this side. We're going to slip stitch into that space. Put that loop up on the fat part of your hook, turn your work, and now we're going to do the same as we did for a square, decreasing into a square. So 4 slip stitches, 1 into each stitch, plus the chain space. So the first slip stitch goes into the first stitch. And you can pull your hook up a little bit. They don't have to be really tight slip stitches. Into the next stitch, slip stitch. The last stitch, a slip stitch, and now into the space, a slip stitch. So now we are ready to start working along our staircase this way. So chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and 3 double crochets into that space. You can see that nice straight edge we've started. 1, 2, 3. Attach that new block to our staircase, just into that chain space. And now you can pause the video and keep working along, doing a new block and attaching to the staircase all the way along until we reach the top of our staircase. At the top of our staircase, slip stitch to join, just like usual. And this is our grow side, so we have to finish this last stair into our stair, because see, our hook is not at the edge. Our hook is in the center there, so we have to do our block to get everything lined up with the edge. So chain 3 and 3 double crochets. And we have to do a block. So we have to do our chain 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, double crochet into the 4th chain from your hook, and each chain working back down to that block. Total of 3 double crochets, so just a normal block, just like we've been doing. Making a brand new block, pinching our new block and flipping up our staircase, and then attaching to that first stair right there into that chain space. So slip stitch to join, chain 3 to get the height for your new block, your new step, 3 double crochets into the space. So just like usual, the center of a C2C is exactly the same. And slip stitching it to the next stair to join. Chaining 3 to get your height. And now you can pause the video and keep working along, building your block and attaching it, building a block, attaching, all the way up your staircase until we reach this last block right at the top. When you reach the top of our staircase, right up there, this is our stop side. We have our stop stitch marker, and it is getting nice and flat on this one side, so we are not growing. We're going to slip stitch into the space to attach our new block. Slide that up onto the fat part of your hook and turn your work. And now we're going to do 4 slip stitches, 1 into each stitch, plus 1 into the space. Into our very first stitch, 1 slip stitch. And remember, you can pull your hook up a little bit to make that a larger loop on your hook. It doesn't have to be really tight. Into the next stitch, slip stitch. Into the last stitch, slip stitch. And into the space, slip stitch. Chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and rotate your work. So our staircase is facing up. We can walk up our staircase, and now we're ready to start our new block and attach it. So all the way up, we are making blocks and attaching it to the staircase. So slip stitch into the staircase to join. chain 3 to get your height for your next block, and then keep working along, making a new block, attaching, new block, attaching, new block, attaching, all the way along until we get to the top of our staircase, right up here. At the top of our staircase, we're going to attach that block. And we're on our grow side. You can move this stitch marker up to keep it more visible if you're making a larger project than I am. Just make sure you can still see that it's a grow. And then into that last block, our hook is not at the edge. Our hook is, well, we have to finish that block right here. So chain 3, 1, 2, 3, 3 double crochets, 1, 2, and 3. Now our hook is at the edge of our work. So that is what I wanted for mine, is just these 4 rows. Now here is some rectangle math for you. If you are wondering how many rows to do for your rectangle to extend it on the one side, you want to divide the width, the narrow side of your blanket by 3. Of course, you can do any which way, but this is just how I do it. So I would divide this narrow side by 3. So how many blocks there are? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 blocks I divide by 3. 3.33333. I'm just going to say 4 for mine. 1, 2, 3, and 4. So I need to do 4 rows. But for any good rectangle, you want 1/3 of the width of the narrow side to do for these rows here. So I want to do 4 rows, and we've done 4 rows. So now I'm not going to be increasing anymore. I'm not going to build another block because that would be row 5. I've done 4 rows here. You can count your chiclets. 1, 2, 3, 4. And I've done 4 rows here. 1, 2, 3, 4. So when you have done the amount of rows that you wanted to, we're not adding any more blocks. We're just going to start decreasing. So to start your decrease, turn your work. And we want to slip stitch into those same 3 stitches and into the space. So into the very first stitch, slip stitch, into the next, slip stitch, into the next, slip stitch, and into the chain space, slip stitch. And then you would do your chain 3, rotate your work, and keep building up your staircase, doing a block and attaching, a block and attaching, a block and attaching, all the way up your staircase. I'm going to be changing colors just to show you that decreasing into a square, just so you can see the different stages of C2C. If you want to change yarn colors when you are decreasing, you can start your slip stitch into that space, but I want to finish it with a different colored yarn. So I'm going to grab my square decrease color yarn, this nice green, and just finish that stitch with my new color yarn, drop both tails, holding them at the back of my work, and now I'm going to do my chain 3. 1, 2, 3. Now working back up along our staircase, 3 double crochets into that first space. And slip stitching to the staircase to join. And chaining 3. So before I let go of my work, I always like to do my chain 3, just so when I come back to it, I'm not confused. What do I need to do? If you stop working on your C2C and you just have slip stitch to join, sometimes you cannot know what you're doing. Are you on this side? Are you on that side? Where are you at? If you do your chain 3 before you stop or before you take a break, then when you come back, you know that that's your chain 3 and you have to do your double crochets into that space right there. We can take out our stitch markers now because now we are doing decreases all the time. No more new blocks. No chain 6s for the rest of our rectangle. So into that next space, 3 double crochets to build our block. So the center of a C2C, always the same. And then we're attaching it to our staircase with a slip stitch and chaining 3. You can pause the video and keep building your block and then attaching it, building your block and attaching it, building your block and attaching it all the way along, and I'll meet you when we get to the top edge of our work. When you've worked up your staircase and you are at that very top edge, we're going to slip stitch to join right into that space, slip stitch. Put that loop up on the fat part of your hook and turn your work. And we're going to do our 4 slip stitches back. So 1, 2, 3, 1 into each stitch, and the last one into the space. So there's our first slip stitch. Remember, you can pull up that stitch or pull up that loop and put it on the fat part of your hook so it doesn't get too tight. All the way along for our 3 slip stitches, and the 4th goes into the space. And then I like to do my chain 3 right now also, so I know what I'm doing. 1, 2, 3. Rotate your work. And now we can build up our staircase again, just like we have been doing for the whole C2C. So into the space, 3 double crochets and slip stitch. Into the space, 3 double crochets and slip stitch. Into the space, 3 double crochets and slip stitch, all the way up our staircase. So you can pause the video and I'll meet you when you get up to the top of your staircase. When you get to the top of your staircase, we're going to slip stitch into that space to join. 1 slip stitch, push your hook up so that loop is on the fat part of your hook, and turn your work. And now we're going to do our 4 slip stitches back. So 3 into stitches and 1 into the chain space. So into that very first stitch, slip stitch, push it up onto the fat part of your hook so it doesn't get too small. Into the last one, a slip stitch, and into the chain space, a slip stitch, and chain 3. 1, 2, 3. Rotate your work. And each row of our decrease has less chiclets, less of these little shells, less stairs. So it goes really, really quick. So now you can pause the video and keep working along the staircase again. 3 double crochets and slip stitch to join to each stair all the way up. And I'll meet you when you get to the top of your staircase right there. When you get to the top of your staircase, we have to slip stitch to attach that last block. Push it up onto the fat part of your hook and turn your work. Slip stitch into each stitch, making sure your slip stitches aren't too tight. Just loosen them a bit, give them a bit of slack. So 1 into each of your stitches and the last one into that chain space. Chain 3, 1, 2, 3. And rotate your work. So into the very first space, 3 double crochets. We're into that very first space. Chain 3. And now pause the video, keep working along, building a block and slip stitching, building a block and slip stitching, and just keep repeating that all the way along until you have 1 block left. Getting close to the end, I'm just going to attach that block, so slip stitch to the staircase. Put the loop on the fat part of my hook and turn my work. slip stitch into each of these stitches. And last slip stitch into the space. Chain 3. And rotate your work. So same as before, except it looks tiny. There's only one little spot left. So into that last space, 3 double crochets to build our last block. Slip stitch to join. Chain 1 to secure your yarn. Cut your yarn, leaving a long enough tail to sew in with a needle later. Pull your hook up and your yarn through and snug that down to secure. And there is our C2C rectangle. So here's our increase, there's our rectangle bit, and there is our decreasing into a square. So congratulations, now you can do any sort of C2C pattern that you like. Now I'm going to show you how to put an edging on your C2C so that you can put any border on it you like. So our yarn has finished right over here, and if you have not cut off your tail, you are welcome to just continue with your yarn. You'll just do a chain 3 and just keep going how I'm going to show you how to do. But for the tutorial, I'm going to be using a different colored yarn just so you can see where I am working in to the C2C. So for your yarn, it's still attached. We just finished off our square right there. So you are not going to be doing this part, but if you are joining a new yarn, we're going to slip stitch with both strands to join and drop our tail. And chain 2. If you have your yarn already attached, just do a chain 3. And now we're going to jump over straight into this next space. So we're going to be working in to these spaces in between those shells or those boxes all the way along. So into the next space, 1 single crochet, chain 2, and into the next space, 1 single crochet, chain 2, and into the next space, 1 single crochet, chain 2. So we're just going to work like that all the way along the edge with a single crochet and a chain 2, just in between those boxes, in between those stitches, just into the space, a chain 2 and a single crochet into each space. So when you reach your corner space, chain 2, make sure you always have a chain 2 in between your single crochets, and then anywhere near that corner, each corner is going to be a little bit different, but you want to find 2 stitches or 2 strands to be on the top of your hook, and then make your single crochet, chain 2, rotate your work a little bit. We're going to go right back into that same spot and make 1 more single crochet. So that is going to be the corner for our border. We have a proper corner now. Chain 2, skip over to the next space in between those boxes, and 1 single crochet, chain 2, and 1 single crochet. So that's how you're going to work around your square or your rectangle to put on your border. And you can see if your yarn was matching, this would just be a really pretty edge on your C2C. So that's why I like to use the same color yarn. So pause the video, keep working around, and I'll show you how to join when we get back to where we started. So this is what mine looks like. My corners are all curled up and it looks really tight, but that is what we want. It's going to help our square hold a really nice border and not get all loose and floppy on the edges. So don't worry if it is snug. It's going to relax in the future. So don't panic about it. It's going to be great. We want it to be a bit snug right now. So now I'm going to slip stitch right in to where these legs are, right in the beginning of that very first stitch we made, that little slip stitch. I'm going to go right in between those legs and slip stitch to join, and chain 1 to secure my yarn. And then I'm going to cut my yarn. If you wanted to use the same color to put double crochets around or single crochets, anything like that, you could keep the same yarn and keep going. But I'll do a separate video for different border options, but all my C2C squares end in this edge right here. It just really helps a lot. So I'll be showing you how to work into these spaces for borders in an upcoming video. Just pull your hook up, your yarn through, snug that down, and you could use this tail when you have it on your needle to just snug those two stitches together, our legs. We can get it to look exactly like the rest of the stitches. When we sew in that tail, we can get those legs matching. So that is a super simple edging for C2C. To change color at the end of a row on an increase, we're going to finish that last double crochet with our new yarn. So when you're making your last double crochet, leave those last two loops on your hook. Grab your new color of yarn. Just hold that old tail along the back of your work so it doesn't get too big, but we can adjust it later, don't worry about it. Bring it through, bring your new yarn through, drop your tail, so now you're holding two tails along the back of your work, and start your new block. So you're doing your chain 6 and starting your new block. So that's how you change color at the end of a row on an increase. Now to change colors on a decrease, I'm just going to finish off this block with the same color of yarn. So I'm just going to slip stitch to join, pull my hook up a little bit so it's a bit comfortable. And now slip stitch into each of the 3 stitches, going all the way back. So each stitch gets a slip stitch, but I'm not going to slip stitch into the space just yet. I'm going to get my new yarn. So then when I slip stitch into the space, I'm just going to hold that old yarn at the back of my work, grab a loop of my new yarn, and slip stitch to join with my new yarn, dropping my tail along the back of my work. So I'm holding 2 tails at the back and starting my new block. So chaining 3. And then 3 double crochets into that same space. So that's how you change colors at the end of a row when you're decreasing. To change color in the middle of a row, we are going to start our double crochet, our last double crochet of that block, but leave it on your hook. Bring a loop of your new yarn, leaving about a 4 or 5 inch tail. Bring it through, drop your tail, holding it along the back of your work, like that. And slip stitch to join that block. And then you would chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and build your block. Just like that. If you want to carry your yarn, so if say you're using your purple yarn and you want to do a purple block up here, you can carry that yarn. So you'd finish your double crochet with your new color yarn and drop your new tail. And then your purple tail, you're just going to bring it and hold it up with that chain space so we can work over it. So slip stitch to join, going over that old tail. Chain 3. And now your 3 double crochets over the chain and over that tail. Now if you want the next block to be purple, then we're going to finish this last double crochet with our purple yarn. So now we're going to drop our turquoise and pick up our purple or the first color we had, just finish that double crochet and then build your next block. So slip stitch, chain 3, 3 double crochets. So that is how you change color in the middle of a row. If you would like to do stripes, I like to plan it out before I get going so I know how it's going to work out. I want both of my corners, my beginning and my end, to be the same color. So the easiest way to sort that out is grab markers that represent the colors of yarn that you have and a piece of graph paper. And you can decide if you want each block to represent one row or if you want each block to represent one set of stripes. And for your stripes, you want them to be multiples of 2. So it could be 2, it could be 4, it could be 6, but you generally want, if you want to carry your yarn, you want all of your yarn on the one side. So going and coming back and changing color all on the same side, so even rows. Now for my grid, I'm just making a small sample, so each of these squares is going to represent one row. So I'm going to do 2 rows of purple, 2 rows of turquoise, and 2 rows of white. And then you would just repeat this, ending with a purple. And this is also a great time for you to decide if you want to just do 2 rows to start, so you change color just after those first 2 rows. For me, I feel like I'm still getting going. I like to do 3 rows just to kind of balance and anchor those corners, the beginning of my blanket. It would also look great if you did it the same way, but you could mirror your rows. So this is another option. So there are my purple blocks, the same, and my turquoise blocks starts that way, but mirrors on the other side. Do you see what I mean? And then we would have the white right here in the center. So you can decide how you want to do your stripes and just kind of lay it out just like this and see if you want to mirror it or if you just want a consistent stripe going all the way through. To plan out your stripes, we just want to be making an L shape. And this is going to help us decide how big our blanket is going to be. And I'm going to start with 3 rows of my purple, and then I'm going to be alternating doing 2 rows of each color after that. So here's what it looks like if we use this purple here as our center line. So that is a mirror image, so it matches end to end. And this is what it would look like if we just continued our stripes in the same order. So if you're doing 3 colors and 2 rows of each, starting with 3 blocks or 3 rows in the beginning, starting with 3 rows in the beginning will leave you ending with 2 rows at the end and in the same color. So cute. Well, not necessarily in the same color. You could leave it, you could move it any size. So this is one way to plan out your stripes so that you know what you are doing. And now I'm going to show you how to do stripes. So finishing off that last block, I'm going to start my last double crochet on the last block, but I'm going to leave those 2 loops on my hook and grab my new color of yarn. I'm just going to put a new color on my hook and bring it through. I'm going to drop my tail, holding it with my other tail. So I'm holding 2 tails along the back of my work. Shrink it down and start my new block. So just do your chain 6. And your double crochet into that chain you're pinching or the 4th chain from your hook, and 1 double crochet into each of the chains. So there is our new block, and we're doing it the exact same. We're just flipping up our work and rotating our block in. And slip stitch to join. So that's how you change colors at the end of a row. And to do your stripes, we're just going to build our blocks up our staircase for 2 rows. So we're going to go all the way up our staircase and then all the way back down. I'm going to meet you on this side. You can carry your yarn up. I'll show you how to do that. Or you can also cut your yarn and sew it in with a needle, whatever you'd like to do. But if you're putting a border on your C2C, you are welcome to carry your yarn up. You don't have to cut it. So pause the video, 2 rows of this color, and I'll meet you back. At the end of your row, remember, we want to finish that last double crochet with our new yarn. So I'll start the double crochet, our 3rd double crochet into that last block, but leaving those 2 loops on your hook. Grab your new color, bring it through, drop your tails, pinching both of them along the back of your work, and start your new block. So do your chain 6, and do your block, so 1 double crochet into those first 3 chains. And then you would just keep going like usual, so flipping up your work and rotating that block in, building up your staircase 2 times so that we are right back down to where all of our yarn is joining. So do that, and I'll show you how to carry up your yarn if you don't want to cut it off. You want to do a border later. So pause the video, 2 rows, and I'll show you how to pick up this yarn from our very first color down here. At the end of that 2nd row, I'm just have that last double crochet on my hook. I haven't finished it. I'm going to just tighten that down a little bit and then pull up that yarn that we want to use for our next stripe. We don't want it too tight. We don't want it too loose. We're going to work over this for our border. So just hold it along your work and finish that double crochet with your new color. And just adjust it so that it's not too snug or too loose. And start your new block. Now it looks kind of sloppy and messy there, but remember, we have all of those tails to adjust. We can snug that all down like that. And now you are ready to keep going. So of course, flipping up your work and rotating that new block in to slip stitch and then working up your staircase. Then you can pause the video and keep working up your staircase, alternating your rows until your project is the width you would like it to be. If you're doing C2C in 2 different colors, you can decide which color you want to be a little bit larger than the other for that center line, or which is going to be your last row of increasing. That's always going to be the biggest axis of the square or the biggest, widest point. And whatever you decrease in is going to look a little bit smaller. If you want both of your colors to be equal, you can do your last row of increasing in a different color, in a neutral or a white, and that will keep both of your colors equal number of rows for both sides. Or you just pick which side you're going to have for your longest or your last row of increasing, and you can join them up in any way to make that an actual feature that you actually want in your pattern. So don't worry about it, but if you do want them to be equal, this is an option right there, changing color for that center row. And these are different hook sizes for the same C2C. So the exact same number of stitches, the exact same yarn, but different hooks. So the smallest hook, I used a 4mm, and it is a really tight, firm, dense fabric. It's very textured, if you can see that. It is lovely, not very many holes in it at all, but it is very firm. It's like a little bit of a wafer. So depending on your project, a smaller hook will result in a much more dense fabric. This is with a 6mm, and it is pliable, but still a little bit dense. It's still a little bit of a cracker. And this is with an 8mm hook. So each of these are 2mm larger of a hook, but you could use any size hook you like at all. This has much larger holes in it and is much more floppier. It's not very much like a cracker. It's very floppy. But depending if you wanted to make a really drapey garment or something like that, you might want to use a larger hook. So C2C is the exact same pattern, but the result depends on your hook size. So just experiment and give it a try and see which one you like the feel of best. You might be wondering how much yarn you need to finish your project. One way is to use half of your yarn increasing and then half of your yarn decreasing. The problem with that is those little slip stitches we make along the side to get back down. That takes up a little bit of yarn. So save a little bit of extra yarn for the decrease section of your blanket. If you are doing just a regular triangle or like a shawl, this is 100 grams. So I would suggest just crocheting up 100 grams and seeing how big it is. So this triangle here is 4 weight worsted acrylic and a 7mm crochet hook. It is 24 inches across. That means each 100 grams will get me 2 square feet of my blanket. So if you wanted to make your blanket, you could use that calculation to find out how many balls of yarn you need. For example, if you were making a blanket 6 feet tall and 4 feet wide, you would times 6 by 4. That gives you 24. So then divide that number by 2, because each 100-gram ball of yarn gives you 2 square feet. For my pattern, my hook and my yarn, that gives me 2 square feet. So I would need 12 balls if I wanted to make a blanket 6 feet by 4 feet. So the trick of it, just remember you need extra yarn for the decrease. So maybe keep 1 extra ball for the decrease section. If you have extra yarn, you can also use it to make your border. So if you have a little bit extra yarn left over, it's really handy just to finish off all the way around the edge so we can start a cute border on our C2C. So I hope that helps you calculate how much yarn you're going to need. If you are looking for some alternatives or some variations you can make on C2C, here are some easy ones right here. So to start, this is our basic C2C, the square that we made together, and that is just our chain 3 and 3 double crochets. So our starting block is a chain 6, and then we skip 3 and do 3 double crochets. So that is just the regular standard C2C. This is the same, except we start with a chain 5. So we chain 5 and skip 2, and that gives us a shorter distance or smaller holes than the standard. So this is 3 double crochets with a chain 5. So here's the chain 6 and 3 double crochets. Here is the chain 5 and 3 double crochets. It is almost the same size. It's just those little holes that are a little bit different from both of those options. Next, we have another version. This is also with a chain 5, but instead of doing 3 double crochets, we do 3 half double crochets. And that changes the size of your project quite a bit. So both of these are a chain 5, skip 2. But this is with half double crochets and this is with double crochets. So you can see the difference in size. And also this is a little bit more stiff. So you might want to consider this if you are doing a graphghan where you just want really small color changes instead of the larger color changes instead of the normal C2C. So these are the basic alternatives to the same C2C. You just change your starting chain for your blocks, and eventually you can also change from double crochets to half double crochets. So I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. I'm waiting for you in that video up there, and stay hooked.